as a company and a brand, you need to be obsessed by the notion of craftsmanship, by the social positioning you're giving to your consumers, by this notion of exclusivity and scarcity. There needs to be also strong experiences from a shopper point of view. So it's a lot of elements where luxury is in detail. So all of this has to be flawless to justify a very strong price positioning.
The luxury industry is reckoning with an uncomfortable truth. Price-led growth has hit its ceiling, and right now it's one of the biggest conversations happening across the sector. Business of Fashion and McKinsey this year released a report to say that around 80% of the luxury market growth between 2023 and 2025 came from price increase, not volume. Bain went further to say that this has been one of the biggest disruptions to the industry in the last 15 years. This is exactly why I wanted to bring today's guest on the show. Daimien Aimon has worked on both sides of the industry, inside organisations like LVMH and also on the management consulting side. He has specialised in revenue growth management, strategy and transformation. He's been working directly with luxury houses on exactly this question: how to drive growth and profitability without losing desirability. And today, he's going to share exactly how. Let's begin with the question at the heart of this episode. Why can one luxury brand raise prices and deepen desire while another raises prices and starts to erode trust?
In luxury, consumers, they're not reacting to the price, but to the meaning of the price. And when you're in luxury sector, it's all about scarcity, desirability, craftsmanship, exclusivity, social positioning. So as a brand and as a company, if you're able to strengthen this dimension, then you're able to justify the price. But if the consumers feel there is not that perceived value, then you lose your price legitimacy.
Many marketers are taught to think about pricing through volume, competitiveness, affordability. But in luxury, price can actually shape, perception and exclusivity to some extent. I want to ask you, what do most people misunderstand about pricing in luxury, and what is genuinely different from non-luxury categories?
In consumer goods, of course, pricing, you need to take into account your gross margin objective. You look at price elasticity, so how the consumers are reacting to the previous prices, and you have your hierarchy of products. In luxury, it's different. I wouldn't say it's necessarily more complex, but it's different because the price is part of the product. It shapes the desirability, it creates the image. So it's absolutely critical to have a bit of more psychology and make sure you have the right price. If the price is too low, you damage the dream in a way. And if the price is too low, potentially the perceived craftsmanship is lower. Or you also feel like the social status you're reaching through buying this product is not high enough. So it's a very complex combination of taking into account all of these inputs and making sure that you have the right positioning. In a post-COVID situation, a lot of brands have increased the prices too high. And we see now the going back, and sometimes it's too late. So you need to continuously work on your craftsmanship, the scarcity, making sure that the distribution is also well controlled, because you wouldn't like your product to be everywhere. So it's a lot of dimensions to basically master.
So let's talk about consumers' resistance to it. I think something you said there, consumers aren't buying the price itself, they buy the justification behind the price. So my question is, why do consumers accept some price increases while others immediately, fall flat and lose credibility?
Yeah. I don't think it's specific to the consumers, but it's specific to the strategy the brand has put in place. So if the consumer, if you and me, we feel there is a continuity between the price, the quality, the innovation, the cultural heritage, a lot of these dimensions that shape a luxury product, then it's probably fine, because there is a justification behind the price. If the price increase is too frequent, not justified by a strong artistic direction or a new innovation or by strong cultural heritage, then probably your consumer will feel that they are fooled in a way. So you have to be super careful about that. And the key is not really to increase the prices once, but make sure you can do it repeatedly, always building on your desirability of the product and the brand. And that's the most key word in this luxury sector related to pricing is how do you create the desirability in a very continued and enhanced way.
Let's talk about accessible luxury because I feel this is a bit of a growth trap. So inside a Maison, the entry product conversation is always more fraught than it looks from the outside because the team selling it and the team protecting the brand are rarely looking at it from the same angle. So what I want to ask you is about accessible luxury. You know, at what point does accessible luxury stop being a growth strategy and start really becoming a brand risk?
I think when you enter these accessible price points, and I've worked a lot on these white spaces. Sometimes you look at the different price points and you realize you're not playing in some of them as a luxury brand, especially the lowest tiers. You have to think about the fact that you're opening the dream to more people. So that's okay to open the dream, but you shouldn't redefine it. So, and some brands have gone into the trap because it's easy in a way. You create a lot of volume, scale effects, but if you go full on without considering the effects of this low entry price strategy on the rest, you're potentially damaging the brand on the long term. And I think demand is not the same as sustainably creating desire. So don't fall into the easy, fast demand track if it can have bad consequences for the medium to long term, I would say.
And can you think of any signals for a brand, somebody, you know, some practical tips for people working inside the brand? I'd imagine you did a lot of this work in your consulting side. When there's a signal that this is maybe happening, you're going down the wrong path with the accessible product. Is there any red flags?
I think positive signals when it comes to pricing in luxuries, you have waiting list, your full price sell-through is good. So that means you have your objective of selling a product at 100 in retail, and most of the cases that's what happens. So these are good signals. Or you have social media, social listening that help you in a way navigate through the desirability and make sure you can measure it. So all that is positive. When you see negative signals, could be the share of promotion is too high or the promotion is too frequent. So that means you have educated the consumers and shoppers in a bad way because they're used to a lower price of your products. And I've seen that in some luxury perfumes, for example, where you have 40% of the volumes sold under promotion. That's a bad sign because you have basically built the bad behaviors for your consumers and shoppers. You have to be very careful about that.
How do brands expand access without, I guess, weakening that symbolic value of the master brand that made it sort of special in the first place?
You need to have a very strong discipline in your portfolio architecture. So you have your price ladders that need to be defined very clearly and you need to follow it. So I think the control or the influence you have over distribution, because some luxury brands own their distribution, so then it's easy to own the retail price, but a lot of them don't. So you have to have a very clear and differentiated channel strategy because you might not have these entry products into the same retailers as your core products, or that will create potentially some issues for your brands, for the retailers. So portfolio architecture, strong influence on the distribution, I think, are key to make sure it's your entry into the dream, but it doesn't redefine everything and potentially damage the long-term desirability.
Okay, so let's continue the thought on promotion. You mentioned promotion there a little bit. I feel like it's almost treated like a taboo topic in luxury, but the reality is more complicated, like you just described. Is there such a thing as a good promotion in luxury, or are we just thinking about it all the wrong way?
Honestly, after COVID and after these booming years where you had scarcity of products, people were not that much concerned about the prices they were paying. There was this notion of revenge spending. Now it's very difficult as a luxury brand to not have promotions because otherwise your volumes will probably decrease compared to your objectives, etc. So for me, it's okay to have promotion as long as it's controlled. It's not all the time. It's not necessarily in all channels also. It's a bad promotion when it's very frequent, when you teach consumers and shoppers bad behaviors, so they're going to wait for the next promotion to buy the products. So then your whole hierarchy is not working anymore. But anyway, I think it's difficult to avoid having promotion now. So really key to think, and there are very good ways, and that's something we're going to talk more about today, but the data orientation in the pricing strategy, I think it's also key for marketeers, is super key. So there are ways to assess the volume uplift of a promotion that you made in the past. Have you multiplied the volume by 3, 4, 7, sometimes 10? What's the return on investment? Because there are promotions that you control and promotions that the retailer put in place without you being part of it. And I think that's the trap I've seen in some of the companies is they turn a blind eye on the promotion, thinking that, we're not going to do promotion, we're very high-end and luxury. The thing is, promotion is happening on the market anyway. So I would rather advise that you as a brand and a company play a part of this promotion game, because that's very key for many consumers, but work hand in hand with the retailers to have a data-driven strategy to your promotion mechanisms, basically.
I love that. What do you suggest? I'm going to get into the technical now. What do you suggest people put in front of them when they are wanting to be data-driven in the promotion? Is there a certain time frame they should be looking at as a minimum? Is there a competitive set of data that they should be looking at as a minimum? I know you and I in our work life also looked at a lot of even consumer research and focus groups and, qualitative data, which is surprising. It's not something you would expect to be asked, but it's one of the reasons I wanted you on the show. It's very holistic.
Of course, the key to promotion analysis is retailer data. So honestly, if you don't have any retailer data, it's difficult, because of course you can ask consumers for their opinion on whether or not they will buy differently in case of a promotion. But it's never as strong as looking at past historical data of your brands, the competitor's brand, and basically the price elasticity. So things that have happened in the past, what effects did they have on the shopper behaviors? So that would be really my key point of focus. So it's a bit of investment, but it's very rich. You also need to avoid the analysis paralysis. Sometimes you have too much data, you don't know what to do with it. But I think we're more and more used to massaging the data, making sure it becomes basically insights.
And can you just take a moment for marketers, because the show is really sort of targeting emerging professionals and emerging marketers. For any that have not been exposed to an elasticity report, can you just explain that for a moment? Because I know it's quite critical in the work you do.
Of course. I think, it's a word that is more and more common, but basically you're going to look at the volume effect of some changes in price. If you have gone through very strong price increase in the past and your volumes have dropped, then you probably have a bad elasticity. So that's something you can analyze very easily as long as you have the retailer data. And it's key to any pricing or revenue growth management strategy.
So you need to have the key data of the sales at each price point for it to work, right?
Yes, and ideally you would like to have a lens on the retailers because the mechanism and the behaviors might be different. So honestly, having very granular data is very key to your redefining of the strategy.
So a good idea would be to maybe partner with some really preferential retailers that you're working quite closely with and try to get your hands on that data.
Yes, that's something I've worked on a lot as a revenue growth management professional in the past few years is there is the pricing strategy, then there are all of the commercial conditions. And we've increased a lot that philosophy of pay for performance. So it's okay to give discounts and rebates to your preferred partners, but that needs to be justified by special services and in some cases special data. And that element has become more and more critical in the past few years. You negotiate for a few percentages points of your sales, some very fine, very granular data from your retailers, and hopefully try to analyze it in a very joint business partner way. This way you will look at the same raw data, but also draw the same analysis and conclusions from it. And that's where I think you build the strongest partnership. as with your retailers.
That's so true. I feel like this is something that's becoming a bigger and bigger trend. I think the retailers are actually realizing that they're sitting on a minefield of gold and are negotiating these into business partnerships now. So it is definitely a trend. There is a way to get your hands on it.
They will monetize it, but I
Yes.
think it's win-win to make sure you get the best insights and decisions, commercial decisions out of it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about pricing power and long-term value. You touched on it a little bit earlier. I feel like pricing power is often treated as a proof of the brand's strength, a bit of a quasi measure. But in luxury, you've said it already, it's really got to be earned specifically and very, very carefully. So what I want to ask you is, what do brands have to build long before they can actually earn that kind of pricing power?
Yeah, pricing power is not your ability to increase prices once, but it's to do it repeatedly and still continuing to build and strengthen the brand desirability. So as a company and a brand, you need to be obsessed by the notion of craftsmanship, by the social positioning you're giving to your consumers, by this notion of exclusivity and scarcity. There needs to be also strong experiences from a shopper point of view. So it's a lot of elements where luxury is in detail. So all of this has to be flawless to justify a very strong price positioning, because all of these elements will have an impact on the perception from a consumer and shopper's perspective of desirability.
I love this topic because anybody working inside a multinational business is probably hearing this conversation where there's one side of the business chasing the revenue and the other side of the business trying to protect budget for that long-term brand building. When you go into an organization from your consulting, sort of put your consulting hat on, what are the first things you look for to make sure that the work you're about to design on the pricing and promotion side is going to work because there is brand strength? What are you looking for when you come in to quickly assess a brand strength?
Pricing strategy is extremely transversal. It's very data-driven and it's very transversal. So a way to assess how strong is the company's strategy and how forward-thinking and long-term the strategy is trying to assess whether there is a really good transversality between finance, sales, and marketing in terms of the products that we are designing, the prices we want the consumers or shoppers to pay, and then in which channels and distribution this will basically be available. And if you feel there are some little wars within and siloed functions, that's a bad sign. If you also think there is probably a short-term focus because we want to gain market share in the next 1 to 3 months, but there is not really a projection behind the next quarter, which is a common pitfall for companies in the stock exchange market, then that's probably a bit worrying, because that means there's going to be, your wheel is going to drive left and right many times. So I think the notion of collaboration and long-term thinking and strategy probably is a good way to see how successful the company can be medium to long term.
Are there any specific skills that you've seen in marketers, and this is sort of to help our audience, what commercial skill that they must have in order to really succeed in this space?
I think by nature they're marketers, so they are for sure consumer oriented, and I think they're also well versed into consumer psychology. But marketing has to work hand in hand with commerce and finance. So I think to be even more successful and have the most holistic view of your function, I think the data orientation is very strong. You need some financial acumen also, because marketing is not just fancy image and égéries and designing the best products. It's also having the products sold in the real life. So that's where the commercial orientation is super key. So anyone that is well able to read the P&L, to understand also the trade terms, I was mentioning it a bit earlier, the commercial conditions with your retailers or partners, I think that strengthen your positioning as a marketer, because you're not seen as only designing the product and image, but also someone who is very operational and has a sense of financial acumen, basically.
Yeah.
So it's a very critical and wide role.
One of the things I remember when I joined LVMH as a marketer, and I eventually sort of moved towards the insights roles, but they were teaching all the marketers the P&L. You must understand the P&L. We had, one of my roles was actually to create that bridge between sort of category development, sort of shopper strategy, and the brand team, who are very, very much embedded in the DNA, but weren't talking about trade terms. So I feel like this is super, super critical right now. But when you go in and speak with different businesses, is there any best in class setup that you're seeing between these different parts of the business that you would recommend? It's a bit of free advice that you would recommend.
I think if the company is able to break the silos, and a simple way to do it, that's something I've introduced as an RGM leader, is making sure that the vast majority of sales, marketing, finance people across the company were well aware of why do we do revenue growth management and pricing strategy, and why do we want to move away from just a cost-plus approach or competition benchmarking and go a lot more into a consumer-focused, data-driven strategy? So through a lot of training, I think also I've seen as a good advice, pricing and assortment strategy reviews in companies are so critical to assess the brand health and the health of a company, because you see if it's siloed or not, if it's short-term or long-term focused. So if you're able to have a strong routine of pricing and assortment strategy, surely that will show that there is good transversality, good vision, and stable vision, hopefully.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a little bit, changing the course of the topics completely, just a little bit about what's going on in the luxury industry right now. As an expert in this space, there's a lot of talk at the moment about luxury went too far. They've been putting the prices up for too long. Everybody's had enough. The downturn is due to too many increases. What's your take on it? What's your personal opinion on what's going on and what should happen next?
Well, I think it's widely recognized now that many companies after COVID have taken too much advantage of the consumers and shoppers by increasing the prices to levels that are not so justified. So I was talking before, when you increase price, you need to justify it by the craftsmanship, the exclusivity, the client experience. Otherwise, consumers feel they're probably a bit fooled. So some companies go backward. Some want to enter the entry price product, so they realize they have a white space. I think it's been a bit too much of a booming time, which led to these extremes. Now I would say the key is to be extremely structured in your price hierarchy, extremely strict in your distribution strategy, making sure that you know what you're going to sell, which product, and at which point. I think also open yourself to the idea that promotion is part of the game. You cannot avoid it, but making sure you have a data-driven way to assess the effects of promotion and of the money you put into promotion. So all of these elements, certainly, but it requires a lot of data, a lot of transversality between the functions, and I think some rigor. It's not anymore about being extremely opportunistic and trying to increase the prices short term because maybe it's going to work. I've seen in some industries a lot of trade downs now happening because consumers will switch away from your category because they found a cheaper category that maybe used to be not as an elite category, but that's good enough for them, or maybe they just don't have the choice anymore.
Or they don't see the value in paying more for the luxury item. There's something, I feel there's a lot of conversation at the moment about these premium brands coming up where the value is seen as the quality, as you mentioned, or the craftsmanship is as good, and people can't justify the prices for the luxury items anymore. It's just too high.
I was working more recently in the cosmetics industry, and I think there's a bit of a revolution because you have some new brands that are coming, honestly, a bit out of nowhere, but that have good products, good ingredients, very good social media strategy, and so it's really a burning platform. It's not anymore, you're not competing anymore with some very big multinational companies, but also with some newer, very agile, very innovative brands. So how do you position yourself as a big multinational company competing against that? That's not so easy.
Yeah, and let's switch the strategy. If anybody listening is got a smaller brand, that sort of aspires towards the luxury cues, what advice would you have? I feel like our conversations have been spoken more about, larger organizations, people with different departments. What if someone's a smaller company and they want to really take a look at their pricing strategy? Where would you tell them to start?
Still the retailer data, I think. So if you have access to some of these shopper behaviors through the retailer data, I think it's very helpful. There might be some niche positionings where you're not going to have a huge scale effect. It's not going to be huge volumes, but that's also fine. I think, again, the continuity between your storytelling, your client experience, the product quality, the innovation, the craftsmanship, this is accessible whether or not you have 150 years of heritage and cultural relevance. So I think there is a lot of room for every company, including smaller and newer ones. And you might not have the long heritage and patrimony, but that's still okay as long as you have this continuity between all of these other elements.
Okay, and is there anything else on the topic to finish off, that we haven't already covered that you'd like to cover that you think is important for people?
To summarize, I think growth quality is more important than growth speed. So if you want to be luxury long-term, create the desirability long-term, really have this extremely focused, rigorous, detail-oriented positioning on your craftsmanship, your exclusivity, your distribution strategy. All of this will help you continuously build a dream, continuously build the desirability, which is absolutely key. And I think as a professional, whether it's honestly finance, commercial, or marketing, make sure you work extremely well, extremely transversally with your other stakeholders in the company, keeping a very data-driven and consumer-focused lens on your work. I think that will certainly help you be a better professional and help your company have hopefully tremendous success.
You mentioned data and consumer centricity. You know that I'm a consumer centricity geek. Where would you tell organizations to start if they don't start, if they're not collecting now, be it somebody in marketing or be it somebody who really wants to up their game in pricing strategy? What's the number one thing they should be doing, and any advice on how to really get data, I guess, literate?
I think there are a lot of case studies that you could recommend through buying the retailer data, buying social media panels, really you don't need to be a huge company and spend hundreds of thousands of euros to have access to this. You also have your past sales data. So there are lots of little tests that you could make by trying to see if you've put a product in a certain distribution at some point, is it working or not? So, but get away from just being a gut feel or listening to the oldest person or more experienced person in the room, but making sure you do have some sense of numbers and data behind the decisions that you're making. And I think there are really many ways, and it's not necessarily costly, but just make sure you know what you want to analyze and do it little by little with some tests. Doesn't need to be a full-fledged approach, which you won't have the team or the money for. You can be very razor sharp and focused.
So this is not the topic to use intuition. This is 100% data.
Yeah, I respect that, of course, some people in marketing would have this notion of intuition or experience acquired through very long experience in an industry. But I think the world is so volatile in so many ways today that I'm not sure it's the best time to do tests just based on your gut feel or intuition, because there are too many risks and there are too many reasons why this could go wrong. So
especially on your pricing strategy.
Right. And the thing is, if it goes wrong once, it's sometimes very difficult to recover.
That's a really good point you make, because this is not you fell over, you got something wrong, get up again. The damage to the brand if the pricing went too low or went wrong is quite significant, isn't it?
Or too high. And sometimes you try to reposition, but honestly, once you've lost credibility and the price legitimacy and the pricing power legitimacy you maybe used to have, that's difficult because competitors will take advantage of that. Some social influencers will certainly realize that and make it very public. So I think it's always good to be entrepreneur and to take risks, but also realize that the consequences of some bad decisions can be really very quick, and both quick and long term, I would say.
And you've worked in global businesses. Is there any particular market that you have different advice for when you're looking at a global pricing strategy?
That's a good point. Honestly, now the social media, the shopping on the web is so widespread that you have created this radical transparency around pricing. So I think it's difficult anymore to have a pricing strategy that is not consistent and aligned. I mean, of course, especially if you don't control your distribution, you're not going to have necessarily the same price everywhere globally. But I would see a tendency also through some large retailers and luxury retailers consolidating. I see a tendency to have pricing corridors or price convergence.
Could you explain those concepts to people that might not have come across those?
So that means at least for clusters of countries, it's very likely that either you will push for it or your retailers or your clients will ask for it. They will ask for a common price across countries. So maybe not across 150 countries, but if you're in Eastern Europe, where, of course, there are different FX rates, different purchasing power, many reasons why the prices should not be the same. But honestly, the consistency and the simplicity of having similar price positioning, I see it as a strong trend. So that means having sometimes having difficult discussions with your retailers, because if they want this, that will have consequences.
Is there a particular region or country that you've found is the hardest to push prices to where they should be sitting?
I think Europe is tricky because it's very wide, very different, and you have many reasons why you could not align the prices. But again, with social media and web purchasing, it's really difficult now to justify prices that are totally inconsistent from one country to the other. Because if you do have this strategy or lack of strategy, you will have cross-border trade, a gray market, and that can have very damaging effects on your long-term brand desirability.
And is there any markets where you feel the consumer's really being conditioned on promotion and it's really hard to honour a real proper price in that region or country?
In Europe, for example, of course, the UK is extremely promotional driven. But honestly, in France, in Germany, in Spain, you do have a lot of these behaviors. So actually, the question would be, are there any markets where consumers don't really proactively look for promotion? I can't really think of it. There are different levels of promotion eagerness. And I think, UK is very strong and it's difficult to break away that vicious cycle in a way. But it's become a bit the norm. And, Amazon is the best price alignment strategy. Amazon is more and more a very key player for luxury companies. It's not anymore a taboo player where you don't put your products.
I remember those conversations where I heard very senior executives say, never in a million years over my dead body. And now I'm watching certain brands appear on Amazon because that customer experience is just incredible.
And you can't really avoid going onto Amazon because it's such a volume game changer for you. So that has probably changed because I remember working in domestic appliances many years ago where we were introducing an Amazon team. And more recently, I was seeing that in cosmetics industry where it's so critical and it represents so much growth for the future that you cannot turn a blind eye and say you're not going to partner with them. But again, it's about partnership, rigor, discipline in your architecture, and making sure your distribution is pushed for, and there is a strategy behind it.
Yeah, like you said, different distributions, like different channels, different distribution strategy, and Amazon's doing something in the digital space that I guess they're ahead of the game, and everybody has to catch up on that seamless, frictionless experience online. Okay, Daimien, so I think we've come to the end. Thank you so much for your time. It's been incredibly insightful. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. À bientôt.
If you found today's conversation valuable, please share it with a friend or colleague in the luxury world who would benefit too. We'd also like to invite you to join our email community for exclusive tools, behind-the-scenes content, and early access to new resources. Just head to luxconsumeriq.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.